Alrighty guys, hope you're doing super well. Today we're going to be talking about the different currencies around the world, what those currencies look like, how do you convert them from that currency to US dollars and vice versa, and much more, like talking about the value of dollars and why certain currencies are stronger than others. Anywho, hope you guys are doing super spectacular and awesome. Let's get right to it. So normally, if I was in the classroom, I would show you guys a bunch of currency from my own currency collections for you guys to actually like feel and touch. Like I have several coins from like Europe and Asia and like paper bills from like Africa and stuff like that. Unfortunately, can't do that, but maybe next year. So I got some pictures of just some different currencies around the world just to kind of go through with the PowerPoint, just so you can get an idea of just what these currencies kind of look like, because I personally think they kind of look super awesome and different, unique. So our first one up is the euro. That's what the euro looks like as far as the euro coins. And in case you don't know where the euro goes, it goes to everyone in the European Union, which is most of Europe. Then you have the United Kingdom. They use not only the euro, but they also use the pound, which has the Queen's face on it and all that different stuff. Most people ask when I have like pounds in the classroom, like, why do they call it the pound? Well, a long time ago, it used to be literally a pound of silver. And it just, since they don't use precious metals like that anymore, they just kind of kept the name the pound. You have Chinese currency here, the yuan. Um, Chinese currency and a lot of Asian currencies, I think, is one of the cooler currencies in the world as far as they look really pretty. That might just be me. I don't know. What do you guys think? Then we have the Hong Kong dollar. And again, this isn't a comprehensive list of all the currencies in the world, but I'm just kind of showing some of the mainstream ones. Hong Kong's really interesting because Hong Kong's such a powerful city economically speaking. Even though it is a city in China, it has its own currency. That's how strong it is. And also, says a lot of different other things, but that's a discussion for a different day. You have the Japanese yen. I think this is a super cool looking currency, if I do say so myself. You have like the Russian rubles, which are cool looking. You have Mexican pesos, so that's something a little bit closer to us. There's a lot of different types of pesos when you go south of Mexico, and each country kind of has its own variation of pesos, but they're not all the same. They're different. You have Canadian dollars. I kind of really like Canadian currency as well because, I wish I could be in the classroom to show you my Canadian $5 bill, but it literally just has like people playing hockey on it. And it's like, huh, interesting. Some people have presidents and important people. The Canadians put something also important to them, and that was ice hockey. And then you have like our money, which you guys have seen enough that I don't need to bore you with those details. And normally in the classroom, I do not show you any of this money because I do not want you guys stealing it. But anywho, let's get talking about currency. So currency is just simply the coins and paper bills used as a money in any type of economy. Every country has its own form of currency. It might be pounds in the British, it might be dollars in the US, it might be yen in Japan. It just depends where you're at. So each country has its own currency, and that government is making the same promise the US makes. It's just a piece of paper, but that government promises that it's worth that much. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about something, though, that's really important when it comes to all kinds of currencies, and that's the concept of inflation. Inflation, as far as a definition, is the general increase in prices and the fall in purchasing value or power of money. I like this picture here because it says a whole lot about what inflation is, because over time, inflation makes currencies of all around the world decrease in value. And we're going to talk about why that is the case. Just to kind of give you guys a little bit of ideas, like when I was your guys' age, $20 bought a lot of groceries at the grocery store. $20 doesn't really go as far as it once did. I remember there was days where you could literally fill up like my grandfather's truck for like 20 bucks at the gas station. Even though gas prices are really nice right now because of the COVID-19 situation, I'm still paying like 35, 40 bucks to fill up my car, which normally used to be like 60 bucks. Anywho, and it kind of like the same thing with like fast food and restaurants and stuff like that. Back in the day, you might have gotten the triple cheeseburger for $5.99, but now you get a single cheeseburger. Why does money lose its value over time? Well, that's something called inflation, and it all happens because of the concept of economics that is very basic: supply and demand. Remember that concept where it's like the more there is for supply, the less the price will be because there'll be less demand for it. Because if there is too much of it out there and not many people are getting it, that means you have a surplus and prices are going to go down, etc. And same thing as if there was a shortage, the prices go up. Well, that's the same thing that happens with money. The more money there is available in the economy, as in more money that's actually printed, the less it is worth. So that kind of is where most middle schoolers would ask the question, you mean it would be a bad idea to just print a bunch of money? Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a case in point. This is a picture from around World War II era of someone in Germany literally using the German marks as wallpaper at one point because the government just kept printing money and money and money, and then eventually it just loses all of its value, and to the point that it was just more beneficial as wallpaper. That's definitely a status symbol if you ask me, but anywho, long story short, the more money is in circulation in an economy, meaning the more that is printed out there, the less it'll ultimately be worth, just because of supply demand. If there's more of it in the economy, the less it's going to be desired. Here's the value of the dollar over the years when it comes to this concept of inflation. So back in the 1971 era, we'll equate that as $1 US. So what is $1 US worth in 1971? What could it get you versus in 2001 to 2006, etc. And notice with this graph here, you can see that the purchasing power or the money area, like the parts of the $1 bill, is actually going down. But then on the red line, you notice that the currency in circulation is going up. You see the correlation there? In 1971, there wasn't as much dollars in circulation, but then as it grew more in circulation, in other words, as the United States kept printing more money, do you see the value of the US dollar going down as far as purchasing power? It's still $1, but it's not going to get you the same amount of stuff as it did in the 1970s. That's why when you look at like in the past, in the year 1950, gas was 18 cents a gallon. A new car was $1,510 for like a brand new car, and you made around $3,210 a year. When you look at it today, in 2018, gas was about $2.89 a gallon. I know it isn't right now. I kind of was going to switch the prices for this, but then I was like, once the coronavirus thing stops, gas prices are going to go back up, so let's just go back to the regular figure. Gas is a lot more in 2018 than it was back in 1950. A new car is worth around $20,000. You make roughly $57,000 a year, depending on what you work. That's a median salary. I don't make that much a year, but you get the idea. Those things stayed consistent in the sense that gas hasn't changed since 1950. It's still used to power a car. New cars are still around the same cost each year, and as far as how much you made in a year, it's still about the same. It's just the value of the currency has dropped to the point they have to give you more money in order to get the same thing. Because the value of the dollar has gone down, you have to pay more for that gallon of gas compared to back in the 1950s. Here's your first notes when it comes to currency. Now, when it comes to currency, they have all these different stuff like the euro, the pound, the won, the Hong Kong dollar, the yen, the Russian ruble, pesos, Canadian dollars. I want to show you Zimbabwe real quick because I always find it fascinating when I show students Zimbabwe currency. I really wish I could show you mine, but unfortunately we can't do that. Here's a $100 trillion note from the Bank of Zimbabwe, in the sense that that's literal money that the government of Zimbabwe printed, $100 trillion notes. Isn't that a little crazy? $100 trillion? I mean, that's enormous. I mean, it might sound cool on paper to be a trillionaire, but the more money is printed, the less it is worth. And if you're printing out trillion-dollar bills, do you think Zimbabwe's currency is worth a whole lot? It's not. My $100 trillion Zimbabwe note is worth less than a penny. That's something known as hyperinflation. That's when you go from inflation to the extreme. It's normal for countries' currencies to inflate because people are going to be printing more money as the years go a while. However, when you go overboard with that, that's like a whole different level of inflation. That's when people will not take the currency seriously at all. It's almost as if the government is breaking its promise and to honor the value of that currency. and the currency slowly becomes worthless and all that different stuff. Hyperinflation is a horrible, horrible thing to happen in your country. You might think it'd be awesome to be a trillionaire, but literally people in the capital of Harare in Zimbabwe were literally protesting their government saying we are broke trillionaires because their money was worthless. All their life savings was worthless because the promise that the Zimbabwean government made at the beginning is now broken. They don't even use this currency anymore to put it in perspective. That's why I have some. Anywho, hyperinflation. It's like the next level of inflation, as in that's when the country is slowly falling apart because the promise of the government has been broken when it comes to money. Now, I want to show you guys how we convert these currencies a bit because not everywhere in the world will they accept the United States dollar, although I will say that a lot of countries do because a lot of people like US dollars because the United States has never broken its promise and we're the best country in the world. So, however, you're going to probably travel one day, not right now because of the COVID-19 situation, and you're going to have to convert your currencies to the local ones in order to be able to buy stuff because you can't just go to like a vending machine in Japan and put in a US $1 bill. It's not going to work like that. So let's talk about how you convert currencies. How do you do that? Well, fortunately for you guys, there's usually a place to do this at an airport. It's called a currency exchange kiosk or something of that nature. You could also even do it at certain banks. Certain banks might be willing to exchange certain currencies for you. Worst case scenario, if you find yourself in a situation, and it happens. When I went to Costa Rica years ago, I literally just converted currencies with the locals because they literally wanted the US dollars. But how would you do the conversion rate to make sure that you are getting the right amount of money? Because if somebody tries to offer you 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollars for your like $100, you might think that's a good deal, but on paper you're getting scammed. So, how do I know how much my dollars are worth? Simple. You use something known as an exchange rate. An exchange rate is simply how much a certain money transfers into another money. And depending on the value of the currency you currently have in perspective to other currencies will determine how much of the other currency you will ultimately receive. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation here, and you have a worksheet that you'll be working on later about converting currencies. It's really super simple. Suppose we all won an all expense paid trip to Mexico for Mr. Shoens Civics class. Now, before we head off, you will receive $100 USD from your parents to spend while in Mexico. Make sure you say thank you to your parents, especially if they're near you, because we're all at home. To arrive in Mexico, we're going to need to convert our currency from USD to the Mexican peso. Currently, it's 18.07 Mexican pesos for every $1 US. So for every $1 US we give, we should receive 18.07 Mexican pesos for it. Taking that exchange rate, you would simply multiply at that point. Multiply 100 by 18.07. And what would you get? And the honors math class already got this. And yes, you'd get 1,807 Mexican pesos for your 100 USD. Now we carry out our history class vacation in Mexico. We have money to spend here and stuff like that until we have to leave. Let's imagine while we were in Mexico, we spent 1,000 of our Mexican pesos, leaving us 807 Mexican pesos on our way back to the United States. Now we have to apply the same process once again to convert our currency, but this time we have to do it in reverse. Remember when we had to multiply 1 by for every dollar we had USD, we had to multiply it by 1807? Well, this time we're going to be doing the reverse. We're going from Mexican pesos to US dollars. The conversion rate is still the same. We just have to do it in reverse. And what's the opposite of multiplication? Because if we multiplied the first go around, then what do we do to reverse the process? We divide. We can't multiply it this time around. That wouldn't work out. So in this case, we would divide it from 18.07 this time around. And then if we did that, we would find out that our leftover pesos would convert to about $44.65 USD, which means we spent about 55 bucks USD while we were in Mexico. So, in summary, when we go from United States dollars to another currency, we multiply. When we go back to that US dollar, we divide. As long as you have the exchange rate, as in what the formula is, you'll be good to go. Now, with that being said, I want to go through a couple of these with you guys so that way you can do it. So, 3, 2, 1, whoa! It's like the worksheet that you have to work on today. Incredible. All right, let's do a couple of these so that way you guys are not totally lost when it comes to this. So, I have the currency exchange rates right here. These are the numbers. It's 1 USD would equal what in these countries. All you have to do is simply do the math at this point. So let's do the first one. So for France, the currency we have is 100 USD. We want to convert it to French currency. So what we would do is simply get a calculator out, and we would literally multiply 100, and then we would look for the exchange rate here, which is 0.81, so 0.81, and we would get 81 French currency, which is the euro, so that works out really well. So you would just simply do that for there. Same thing for here with the United Kingdom. We started off with 200 USD, so let's clear that out real quick. We have 200 United States dollars. Let's multiply it by 0.71 for United Kingdom pounds, which means we're getting 142 pounds out of it. Make sure you guys include the 0.00, etc., so that way I know what you mean by it. And the same thing works for even all of these, including stuff like Spain, Japan. Let's do the Japanese one real quick because that'll be a big number. So we have 300 USD. We simply multiply it by 106.24 yen. We'll get 31,872 yen out of that one. So, and then you simply just type it out at that point and you'd be good to go. Other than that, guys, this should be pretty straightforward, but if you have any questions whatsoever on this, by all means, just email me. I'd be happy to help you guys out when it comes to this. This is just a bit of a practice to give you guys the idea of how to do it. I won't hold it to you if you aren't super masters when it comes to this. Make sure you guys get this done. Hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you guys later.